Hello and welcome to yet another vlog by Pale Blue Thoughts. In our school, we have all learned that on 20th of July 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first human to step on the moon. He and Aldrin walked around for 3 hours, but there are a section of people who state that these trips from Earth never reach the moon and they just revolve around the Earth and came back, and that we can never land on or reach the moon. These people are all around the world. It's amusing to hear their arguments supporting the claim. These would be the same people who would blindly believe that thousands of years ago some saints, prophets or gurus traveled from one planet to another or flew on giant birds or donkey-like beings around the universe, but they would not want to believe that as recent as 1969, humans stepped on the moon.
Right. Apollo 11 was the space flight that first landed humans on the moon. Commander Neil Armstrong and lunar module pilot Buzz Aldrin formed the American crew that landed the Apollo lunar module Eagle on July 20, 1969 at 2017 UTC. Armstrong became the first person to step onto the lunar surface 6 hours and 39 minutes later on July 21 at 2:56 UTC. Aldrin joined him 19 minutes later. They spent about 2.25 hours together outside the spacecraft and they collected 47.5 pounds, 21.5 kilogram of lunar material to bring back to Earth. Command Module pilot Michael Collins flew the Command Module Columbia alone in the lunar orbit while they were on the moon surface. Armstrong and Aldrin spent 21 hours 36 minutes on the lunar surface at a site they named Tranquility Base before lifting off to rejoin Columbia in the lunar orbit.
5 subsequent Apollo missions also landed astronauts on the moon. The last, Apollo 17, in December 1972. In these 6 space flights, including Apollo 11, 12 people walked on the moon. 5 of the 6 missions achieved successful landings, but the Apollo 13 landing was prevented by an oxygen tank explosion in transit to the moon, which destroyed the service module's capability to provide electrical power, crippling the spacecraft's propulsion and life support systems. The crew returned to Earth safely by using the lunar module as a lifeboat. Apollo 17 became the last manned mission to the moon for an indefinite amount of time. The main reason for this was money. Cost of getting to the moon was, ironically, astronomical. We have also acquired basic knowledge about the moon, and in the subsequent trips, the hard work, money, and risk involved didn't match the outcome. Hence, America decided to stop further missions. It all started with the space race, which was the 20th century competition between 2 Cold War rivals, the Soviet Union, called as USSR in those days, and the United States, to achieve first in space flight capability. The competition began in earnest on 2nd of August 1955 when the Soviet Union responded to the US announcement 4 days earlier of intent to launch artificial satellites for the International Geophysical Year. They did this by declaring that they would also launch a satellite in the near future. The Soviet Union achieved the first successful launch on 4th of October 1957 by launching Sputnik 1 and sent the first human to space with the orbital flight of Yuri Gagarin on 12th of April 1961. The USSR also sent the first woman, Valentina Tereshkova, to space on 16th of June 1963, with numerous other firsts taking place over the next few years with regards to flight duration, spacewalks, and related activities. According to Russian sources, these achievements led to the conclusion that the USSR had an advantage in space technology in the early 1960s. Hence, in 1961, John F. Kennedy, the then US president, announced that by the end of the century, US would try and send a man to the moon and back.
Now let's see some of the events that led to the birth of the moon landing hoax conspiracy. Number 1. Capricorn 1 is a 1978 thriller film in which a reporter discovers that a supposed Mars landing by a crewed mission to the planet has been faked via a conspiracy involving the government and, under duress, the crew themselves. This movie was written and directed by Peter Hams. So some people started to doubt that as the Mars mission was faked in the movie, the moon trip also could have been faked. Number 2. On February 15, 2001, the Fox television network aired a program titled Conspiracy Theory: Did We Land on the Moon? This program showed alleged evidence that NASA had faked the moon landings. This hoax theory has been around for several years, but this is the first time it has been presented to such a wide audience. This program termed the Apollo missions as concocted and bogus. 3. There are also some books written which went quite popular, further leading to the apprehensions of moon landings. Bill Kaysing was an American writer who claimed that the 6 Apollo moon landings between July 1969 and December 1972 were hoaxes, and so a founder of the moon landings conspiracy theories, Kaysing thus wrote a book in 1974 titled We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 billion Swindle. Ralph Rene was an American small press publisher. His 1992 self-published book, NASA Mooned America. This details why he felt that the Apollo moon landings were faked and actually produced from a closed studio. There are many other books published with the same storyline and intention which got sold in thousands and thousands of copies. Modern flat earth societies are organizations that promote the pseudoscientific belief that the earth is flat. Such groups date from the middle of the 20th century. Some of its adherents are serious and some are not. Those who are serious are often motivated generally by religion or some conspiracy theories. The Flat Earth Society was one of the first organizations to accuse NASA of faking the landings, arguing that they were staged by Hollywood with Walt Disney sponsorship, based on a script by Arthur C. Clarke and directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Now let us see some of the claims and arguments made supporting that moon landing was a hoax. These were majorly based on some of the pictures sent out by NASA after the moon trip. On the internet, you will find hundreds of such claims and arguments. We have taken the most common and popular ones to debunk, which shows this NASA picture. Aldrin coming down is fraudulent and astonishing. The enlarged picture shows his both legs are in the air. So they claim this to be photoshopped and made up. Funny thing is that the software Photoshop wasn't even created then. We can't judge an action seeing a still photograph. Someone jumping in air and a photograph can be easily taken showing him floating in the air. Making such a big claim and judgment just seeing still photographs is appalling indeed. The second picture shows Aldrin standing opposite to the sun. This picture was taken by Neil Armstrong himself. In this picture, these people question if the sun is behind Aldrin, how is it that Aldrin's front side is all lit up and bright? Hence, there must be some other source of light present there. Now, what is the fact here? Whenever sunlight falls on the moon, the lunar terrain reflects back approximately 12% of it. So this secondary source of light is actually enough for Aldrin and his white colored suit to light up from the front side as well. Apollo 11 landed at the time of sunset, yet the background is devoid of any stars. The fact here is that you take any picture of Earth taken from space, or even if you see pictures taken from the International Space Station, majority of the pictures won't have stars in it. If the astronauts had cameras on tripods said to have long exposure times, then the stars would become visible. Instead, the cameras were set up to take pictures of the bright astronauts with the bright sun and the bright lunar surface. This means that the shutter time was much faster and the stars didn't get time to get exposed on camera. Moreover, there is a risk of camera film to melt, keeping in mind the extreme temperatures on the moon if exposed for a higher time.
Number 4. How easily the lunar module lifted off after landing. Tons of fuel, launching podium, ground control, etc. were missing. We all know how much power and equipments are required for a rocket to be launched from Earth. So it's impossible to believe that the lunar module lifted off so easily from the moon. We are used to seeing huge fire explosion, etc. required for any rocket to be launched into space. Rockets launched from Earth generally uses kerosene and liquid oxygen as fuel. But the lunar module didn't use the same combination of a fuel and oxidizer. Instead, it used hypergolic fuels, which are fuels that react spontaneously upon contact with an oxidizer and do not require an outside ignition source such as spark plugs. Instead, these fuel and oxidizer mixtures, which are sometimes gelled, are stored separately and mixed to provide ignition. They burn in clear flame. Another reason why we don't see the huge flame explosion on the moon is the fact that there is no atmosphere on the moon to hold and provide a blanket to the fire exhaust, unlike on the Earth. Number 5. How come the flag flutter given the fact that the moon has no atmosphere? Even on Earth, a flag won't fly like this. When Commander Armstrong and lunar module pilot Buzz Aldrin planted the American flag, the red and the white fabric appears to move as if it was in the wind. According to the UK National Space Centre, the flag's apparent movements were caused by the astronauts themselves and not the wind. The flag was disturbed as it was planted onto the ground and kept this bent shape because of the lack of strong gravity on the moon. In video footage of the flag being planted onto the moon's surface, it also appears to wave back and forth. This is primarily because when astronauts were planting it, they rotated it back and forth to better dig into the lunar soil, which of course made the flag ripple like a pendulum without a breeze. There's a huge amount of footage of the flags stood on the moon in exactly the same position. By simply comparing photos of the moon snapped after the flag was planted, you will definitely see that the astronauts moving around, but the flag remains in the same exact position. Also, if a wave is defined as the astronauts planting the flag, which is held in place by both a horizontal and vertical bar, twisting the pole to get the flag to stand upright, etc., then yes, the flag waved. However, it wasn't due to the breeze. The reason the flag has ripples in it is because the horizontal bar didn't fully extend on the Apollo 11 landing.
The shadows in the moon pictures are cast in different directions. This means that there must be at least two light sources. First, anyone who has ever walked outside at night under street lamps will notice multiple shadows cast from the various street lamps. As a good rule of thumb, one light source equals one shadow. If there are multiple spotlights in use, we should see more than one shadow for each object. But that is not the argument made by moon hoaxes. They are talking about the directions of the shadows. Now, if you look at the pictures, you will see one shadow. The reason the shadows appear in different directions is an effect caused by our uneven lunar surface and the two-dimensional nature of photographs. There is no blast crater under the lunar module. The lunar module should have created a blast crater as it landed. When landing, the lunar module only exerted a pressure of about 1.5 pounds per square inch. That isn't a lot. The Van Allen belts, that is the radiation belts above Earth, would kill any astronaut passing through it. Phil Plait over at Bad Astronomy puts it best. The Van Allen belts are regions above the Earth's surface where the Earth's magnetic field has trapped particles of the solar wind. An unprotected man would indeed get a lethal dose of radiation if he stayed there long enough. Actually, the spaceship traveled through the belts pretty quickly, getting past them in an hour or so. There simply wasn't enough time to get a lethal dose, and as a matter of fact, the metal hull of the spaceship and indeed most of the spaceship would block the radiation.
Number 9. The lunar module should have kicked up dust as it landed. That dust should be visible on the feet of the module. Again, the module did kick up a little dust, but not anywhere near that much. Why? Simply because there is no air on the moon. When a rocket blasts off from Earth, air pressure helps kick everything around. On the moon, however, only dust that touched the exhaust was displaced. Number 10. The first videos sent out by NASA after Apollo 11's landing is very unclear. The hoax theory, people claim this is made unclear on purpose for making it difficult for people to find out the mistakes in the hoax claim of moon landing. Let's see why the videos were of poor quality. A. Television pictures of the Apollo 11 landings were sent directly to Earth from the surface of the moon using the lunar module's antenna and power supply. Apollo 11 was thereby limited to using a black and a white slow scan TV camera with a scan rate of 10 frames per second at 320 lines per frame.
Now let us give some evidences that moon landings were all true and facts. After all the moon trips, now we have brought back 363 kilos of lunar rocks. All these are around 3.4 to 4.4 billion years old. Its rocks are similar to Earth's rocks and contain many but not all of the same minerals. However, the moon has no atmosphere. It shows no trace of past or present life, and its rock contain no water. The moon rocks show the lunar surface is very ancient. Hence, we can't hoax and bring something which is found on Earth and claim as lunar rock. As for the manufactured approach, we have moon rocks from Antarctica that fell as meteorites. The samples from the moon were tested against the samples from Antarctica, and the test proved that they were indeed from the moon. As for the claim that all of the moon's rocks came from Antarctica, that is also incorrect. As any meteorite, when it falls through the atmosphere, it gets scorched and oxidized. The Apollo samples do not possess those same qualities. Russia confirmed NASA landings on the moon. They are now partners in conducting the ISS, or the International Space Station. To say Russians and Americans worked hand in glove to cover up the hoax is equal to terming the entire Cold War as fake. Evidence 3. Not even a single deathbed confession in the last 50 years. How can all be silenced? Around 400,000 people were engaged in 17 Apollo missions. Another million were indirectly involved. Around 65% of them are still alive. How did NASA silence so many people for so long?
Number 4. The first footprints put on the moon will probably be there a long time. Maybe almost as long as the moon itself lasts. Unlike on Earth, there is no erosion by wind or water on the moon because it has no atmosphere, and all the water on the surface is frozen as ice. Also, there is no volcanic activity on the moon to change the lunar surface features. Nothing gets washed away and nothing gets folded back inside. Number 5. The producers of Kodak films and Hasselblad cameras see no foul play in the photography. Both are proud to be part of the Apollo missions. Number 6. The Apollo 12 lunar module landed near Surveyor 3, which was the third lander of America's unmanned Surveyor program sent to explore the surface of the moon in 1967. On November 19, 1969, astronauts Conrad and Bean examined the spacecraft and they brought back about 10 kilograms of parts of the Surveyor to the Earth, including its TV camera, which is now on permanent display in the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C.
We would like to conclude by stating, have you really thought about what it would take to fake a moon landing? Because the rocket did launch. Many people saw the rocket launch. Okay? So there is the hardware right there. There are office buildings full of blueprints for the design of the Saturn V rocket. There are hundreds and thousands of engineering hours that went behind all this and records of those designs. If you wanted to fake the moon landing, you would have to fake all these documents, and it genuinely seems to us that's way easier to just go to the moon. Has anyone considered that? Just go to the moon. That is easier than faking all this. So, yeah, we went to the moon. We hope you enjoyed this video. We will be back with more vlogs and snippets. Till then, keep the scientific temper growing and let it not be eclipsed by any conspiracy theories. Bye-bye.